Now, the UK has joined America in announcing it will send long-range mobile rocket launchers to Ukraine. The combined number is thought to be less than 10, but they represent a significant upgrade to the Ukrainian armed forces, which have struggled to counter long-range artillery being used by the Russian military. Moscow has warned it will, in response, strike at targets which it has not yet been hitting. Our defence correspondent Jonathan Beale reports.
Ukraine's President Zelensky visited his forces now fighting a brutal, costly war in the east this weekend, sheltered in a building from the artillery shells that continue to rain down on their positions. This was his first visit to the Donbass since Russia refocused its offensive here. He's already described the situation as hell. This, a chance to boost morale.
You are true heroes of our country, Ukraine. You are heroes of war. Because of you, we have and will have our land and our country.
Ukraine's forces are outnumbered and outgunned. Russia's vast arsenal of artillery and rockets being used to try to pummel and break Ukraine's defences. Both sides are taking heavy casualties. But for Ukraine, more help will soon be on its way. Today, Britain announced it will be sending this, its most advanced rocket launcher, following the lead of the US, which is supplying Ukraine with a similar system. The British Army's multiple launch rocket system can fire a dozen rockets in a minute and has a range of up to 50 miles, further than most of Russia's artillery. The flow of weapons from the West has already angered Moscow, though President Putin has also been trying to play down its significance.
We believe that the delivery of rocket systems by the United States and some other countries is related to making up for the losses of combat hardware. There is nothing new about that, and this actually changes nothing.
No one weapon is likely to dramatically alter the course of the war in the Donbass, which is already being reduced to waste and ashes. Particularly in such small numbers. The US is so far sending 4 of its rocket launchers to Ukraine. The UK is supplying 3. But for Ukraine, which has repeatedly asked for these systems, every little helps. Jonathan Beale, BBC News.
Well, our reporter Joe Inwood joins us live now from Kiev. And Joe, so much to talk about, but I just want to pick up where Jonathan left off. And really, since the beginning of this war, Ukraine has made it clear that it needs all the help it can get. And as we've seen the fighting intensify in the east, in the Donbass, and President Zelensky say in the last few weeks that they've lost 60 to 100 men a day, these long-range missiles really will help.
Yeah, I think they are what they need in terms of quality, but not necessarily in terms of quantity. As Jonathan was saying there, maybe less than 10 systems in total. That is not going to change the tide of this war, but in terms of the strategic or tactical capabilities, they are something of a game changer. And to explain why, I think we need to understand the difference between them and what the Russians have and the Ukrainians currently have. So these new systems are able to target to within a few meters at a range of 50 miles, whereas what the Russians have can hit an area maybe within the size of a football pitch within 50 miles. So when it comes to this artillery battle that we're seeing now, the back and forth of the big guns and the rocket launchers that's taking place, the capacity to target with that level of precision is going to be absolutely crucial. The question is for the Ukrainians, can they get them into the fight fast enough? Can they get their men trained up quickly enough? Can they get them to the front without them being destroyed by Russian air power? And in the long run, can they get more? Because I think they will need them. Yeah, big questions there, Joe. Tell us about what's happening in Kiev, because frankly, for the last 5 weeks, there's been relative calm, there's been a lull. It seemed like the Russian airstrikes had stopped, but that's changed overnight. Well, yes, I mean, over the weekend, we did see the sort of the calm that you refer to, the almost sense of normality that had returned to this city was shattered by airstrikes on Sunday morning. A number of cruise missiles hit a site just over in the east of the city over there. It was obviously a jarring event and something, as I stood here on the balcony on Sunday morning and watched the smoke rise, you were reminded this was still a city at war. But I think it is worth saying that this city has experienced this already and it gets back to normality. I don't think people here are panicking or thinking this is a game changer. It's probably just a question of being reminded every now and again that the conflict is still going on and that Russia has the capacity to do things like it did over the weekend.
Yeah, and Joe, while the conflict is raging on, is there a sense in Kiev, from the people you're speaking to and the political circles, but also the ordinary people, that perhaps from the international community there's a sense of fatigue as it rages on?
I think it depends which part of the international community you're referring to. We are starting to see, I mean, I must say this isn't a topic everyone's talking about in the pub all the time, but we are starting to see a sense of fracturing amongst the Western alliances, I think. You still have clear and resolute support from the Americans, from the United Kingdom, from the Canadians, and from the Eastern Europeans. But I think there is a sense of concern here that the call that we saw, for example, between Chancellor Olaf Scholz, President Macron of France, and President Putin just last week, the idea that those powers, that the Frances and the Germanys are talking about negotiations when the Ukrainians say there's nothing to negotiate at this point, that is the beginning of those two putting pressure on the Ukrainians to come to a settlement which would involve them making many, many compromises.
Joe, thank you so much for that update there from Kiev.